The last thing that I would want is for Israel to become a partisan issue. And I regret that some people have misperceived my visit here this week as doing that. Israel has always been a bipartisan issue. Israel should always remain a bipartisan issue.
I don't think it's permanently destructive. I think that it is a distraction from what should be our focus. And our focus should be, how do we stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon?
The president, talking to Reuters late this afternoon, asked a question about his national security advisor last week, saying the fabric of the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, that this visit is destructive to that, kind of dialing that back today as we get ready for the Israeli Prime Minister to speak to Congress tomorrow. Let's bring in our panel, syndicated columnist George Will, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. George, what about this dance back and forth, about what's being said about both leaders?
Well, there's obviously personal animosity, but a tremendous national interest in not letting the trouble between the heads of the two regimes disrupt the relationship of the two countries. Mr. Netanyahu tomorrow will be speaking to an American nation that has been engaged in 3 national attacks in the Middle East: Libya, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And he has to be, the subtext of his remark has to be that there must be circumstances in which you will go to war for a 4th time. That is, that a preventive war is preferable to allowing nuclear weapons in the hand of a regime, because the Iranian regime cannot be deterred the way the Soviet Union was. The theory being that they are in the grip of such religious fanaticism that they can't be rationally calculated.
You heard Secretary of State today warn that they don't want any more potential details of this deal coming out, and they, I think that the Israelis know a lot about it. Take a listen to the president with a little bit more substance about this deal, and then the Director General of the IAEA.
If, in fact, Iran is willing to agree to double-digit years of keeping their program where it is right now, and in fact rolling back elements of it that currently exist.
Double-digit years.
Double-digit years. If we've got that, and we've got a way of verifying that, there's no other steps we can take that would give us such assurance that they don't have a nuclear weapon.
The agency is not in a position to provide credible assurance about the absence of undeclared nuclear material and activities in Iran, and therefore to conclude that all nuclear material in Iran is in peaceful activities.
So let me interpret there. I mean, the Director General of the IAEA is saying, we can't tell you because they're not cooperating.
Right.
And how is the regime going to cooperate on this deal if they're not cooperating now with the IAEA?
Well, that's what the president is saying. He said he gave it a less than 50-50 chance, and he said the only way it works is if, and that's a huge if we can verify that Iran is living up to this. And then you have the UN guy saying, well, they're not even living up to what they're supposed to be doing now. It's possible that the best political outcome for everyone is that the Iranians don't agree to a deal, and that the president can't get even his bar, which Netanyahu feels is way too low, met in these negotiations. But I think what George just laid out was exactly the subtext of what Netanyahu is going to say tomorrow. I wonder if he'll be so clear and candid to say, I am asking the United States to go to war to stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. That is exactly what he's asking. But that would be a pretty huge ask right now of the American people.
Is the adverse true? If the Iranians take the deal, is that the worst possible thing?
No, look, the Iranians are resisting because they have a deep-seated antagonism and hatred of the West, of the United States in particular, the great Satan, that might in the end prevent them accepting a deal in their own interest. But I have to dissent very strongly from what my colleagues are implying here, that the point of the Israeli position is to make America go to war. I think that is wrong, and it's near libelous. Bibi began his speech by talking about Israel defending itself. It has never once in its history, unlike any of the Arab states that America has saved, ever asked for American help. In all of its wars, it fought alone. It emphasized that. And second, the idea that the only alternative to accepting a capitulationist negotiation, which is what we are offering Iran, that the only alternative is wrong, is equally false. there is a middle way. Obama always says it's either what I am demanding or war. It is not. We were imposing sanctions on Iran, which were extremely strong, had caused a collapse of the currency, huge inflation, and grumbling in the shuk, in the streets, among the merchants, which is exactly what had destroyed the regime of the Shah. And now we are in a position where Congress is trying to add on to that. And remember, the earlier sanctions, which brought Iran to its knees and to the negotiating table, were in a condition of $100 oil. It's now less than half of that. So it is in a position where its economy could collapse under sanctions. Nobody is asking for America to go to war. What the Israelis are asking, what a lot of Americans are asking, including the majority of Republicans, is real sanctions and give the Israelis the right, the green light, to go and defend themselves. They have never asked for Americans to go to war on their behalf, and they are not asking that today.
It certainly is the case that it is the heart of Benjamin Netanyahu's life and career that Israel exists because Jews will never again depend on the kindness of others. They're not going to be like Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire. They're going to defend themselves. I am not competent to say whether the Israeli Air Force, even if it can overfly Saudi Arabia, is capable of the number of sorties necessary to suppress Iran's air defenses and then to do lasting, serious damage that can't be reconstituted in a hurry to the nuclear weapons program. But I do not see how this whole argument makes any sense unless the threat of war is there.
But it doesn't. But the implication that it has to be an American war, I think, is simply false.
Well, you can see that the Israelis can't do it themselves by all military experts you talk to.
No, I don't think so. I think it is quite possible, particularly if they have the assistance of the Gulf Arabs. We have heard reports that the Saudis are offering to their airspace, which reduces the demands on the Israeli Air Force. It reduces the refueling issue, perhaps even landing rights. So there is we don't have access to Israeli plans. The Israelis conducted a rescue in Uganda, sort of half a continent away, that everybody had assumed was impossible. The Israelis are preparing, the Israelis are prepared to do it. All they are asking is for a green light that America won't turn against them, as Europe will if they launch an attack,
by the way,
and to apply sanctions.
Well, a couple questions. Number one, if there's no deal, will Europe stay strong in the sanctions regime? That's one of the reasons it's working so far, because the Europeans and the United States have been united. Second of all, what we hear from military experts is that even if Israel did launch a strike and got the refueling help it needed from us or from the Saudis, it could only set back the program by a year. It would have to continue to do it over and over again.
When the Israelis attacked the Iraqi reactor in 1981, the estimate was they would have to redo it a year later. The Israelis cannot live on promises and hope. If it means returning, the Israelis will return. The Israelis have to think in 1- and 2-year increments. It's not like the United States with a 200-year history. Israel lives on the edge every day. So it's not as if it needs a solution that'll be eternal, but it needs something, and what the negotiations offer is worse than nothing.
Last word.
Well, the United States has said, in December 11, Leon Panetta, then Secretary of Defense, said, if we believe Iran has decided to get a nuclear weapon, we will do whatever is necessary to prevent it. 3 months later, Barack Obama said, my position is not the containment of a nuclear Iran, but the prevention of a nuclear Iran. Makes no sense unless somewhere in there is a threat of American force, but no one believes that.
Next up, a murder mystery in Moscow.